And we're back. Welcome again to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. This is... skip the drum roll. This is episode 20. Proud to have made it this far. Glad all of you out there are listening. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks especially to folks who are writing in. I've seen a slight uptick recently in people leaving comments on the blog. We've been trying to kind of tailor things to sort of draw comments from our readers. So cool that you had posted a couple of things. Also very cool is we've... our friend Michael, gosh, I hope I get to meet this guy someday. Someday I'll be in Europe and busy doing something, and I'll find a day where I can stop and go meet this guy in a pub and mix a little show for him, drink a beer with him. We've gotten so many emails back and forth from Michael, and apparently there are even a few that we missed. We had, for some reason, one of his didn't get through, and some of ours didn't get back through. So anyway, I think we got it all straightened out with him now. But yeah, he's pretty much our creative director at this point. He's sort of steering which way about half of the posts go. And
since we're out of topics most of the time, he's coming up with new ones for us. It's great.
So you too could have us on hand as your problem solvers should the need arise. And eventually, as the season slows down, there may even be a couple other guys on the podcast periodically to fill things in. Not Carl.
He'll be busy for a little while.
Busy with the matrimony. And actually, I think Gordon pretty much fell off the face of the earth. I don't know if he's playing some holy matrimony too, or
plays a lot of Scramble with Friends.
Is he on there? I play Draw Something.
I think it's your move, actually.
So I don't see it. Probably is. I've been slacking lately. But at any rate, we're going to start out. Let's start out with questions from the viewers, and then I'll have a question for the viewers. Viewers. I call it viewers. You know why? It's because we're on YouTube. Even though it's completely audio and no video at all. Well, anyway, Michael wrote us this week, and there are a few other details here and there about he's trying some different things as far as finding an EQ that's going to work for him. If you haven't been listening right along, Michael is a singer/acoustic guitar player who plays a lot of pub gigs in Germany, and he is only moving about via means of public transportation, so I would assume that means a bus a fair amount of the time, maybe a cab. Michael's also blind, so he needs to transport whatever he is transporting on a bus or in a cab, and
not
still
working with a Stevie Wonder budget.
Yeah, and still have a hand free for his cane. So by far one of the most adventurous souls I've ever had the fortune to run across. Proud to know him. Hope I get to shake his hand someday. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, his question today was about, we had talked about cabling a little bit on the blog, and he knows there's a lot of mythology out there about what you should do and what you shouldn't do, so I thought we'd sort of address some cable myths, go down the line here, and the first one, we'll start with a little bit of fact, is crossing power cables or running within proximity to power cables. And what I'll say here is the basic physics behind it is any wire carrying a current will have a magnetic field around it. And if you want that magnetic field to not interfere with other wires around it, the best way to run them is if you have to take a wire containing audio and cross it over a cable containing power, to do them at right angles. And if they do need to run parallel, run them as far apart as possible. Although sound systems are getting good enough and noise rejection is getting good enough that it's not inconceivable that you could run power cables, even lighting power cables with dimmers at one end and lights at the other, run audio cables right next to those. And the key there is to have balanced connections, which from instrument to amp is probably not going to be the case unless you brew up a custom rig, which we can talk about a little bit. Yep. But not running line and instrument level signals from the stage to the mix will be a huge help. You can really only count on, in the best of situations, about 30 feet of unbalanced line. If you don't know what we're talking about, balanced and unbalanced, go look it up. I can explain it, but not without drawing pictures.
There are different types of quarter inches, and balanced have more contact points.
Yep. So I'm not gonna get into it. There's too much physics. I literally can't do it without drawing a picture. But there are some great articles around there start with Wikipedia, head to Pro Sound Web. You can find plenty of information on there.
Didn't you write an article about it too?
Yeah, there's a couple of things on the Smart to Noise blog, which is at smart2noise.blogspot.com. Check that out. If you're only a listener and not a reader, we'd love to have you as a reader. But at any rate, in a good system with all balanced cabling, I've actually had nights where I've set up out on a gig where my amp racks were sitting quite literally on top of racks of dimmers, and I had very, very little dimmer noise. And I mean, we're not talking like a 48 rack of ETC sensors or something nice from the folks at Strand. We're talking about 70s
Chauvet.
vintage. No. I think they were Strand or Leprechaun or something. They were a name, a good name, but 70s era SCR, which stands for Silicon Controlled Rectifier. Basically whirlwinds of electromagnetic activity, noise hounds of the highest degree.
Because they don't really have to worry about noise in the lights, so it's not.
Oddly, they did make noise in the lights, though. You could hear.
Right, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to push audio through it, so it wasn't
No.
as big a concern for that, at least.
And years ago, the dimmers would have been on one side of the theater, and the audio would have all been on the other, if there was any. But, these ancient theatrical dimmers that have been resurrected to do, park hands for bar bands. We were out in a pavilion somewhere some night, real tiny stage, the only spot to put my amps, I think maybe to keep them out of the water because there wasn't enough room on stage and there were big puddles all around, was to park them on top of the lighting guy's rack. So my monitor rack and my front of house rack sat in close physical proximity to a couple dozen channels of the noisiest imaginable AC electrical devices. But because all of my cabling was balanced cable and balanced systems have good common mode noise rejection, which common mode noise is noise that occurs on the shield of a cable. And it's the most common type of noise that there is, hence the name common mode noise. You'll hear the term common mode noise rejection a lot. Shielded cabling came up in Michael's email, which there'll also be some posts, or will have been some posts by the time this goes to air.
Topic building.
The topic of shielding, and shielding is always a good idea, but how do you approach it? Do you? Some people will go so far as to ground the shells of XLR connectors, which is really sort of a studio practice, and also like the ways that manufacturers deal with the chassis ground. That is like the way that the metal case of the device is connected to ground. It may be the same ground that the audio circuits are grounded to, or the audio ground may be arbitrary to the case ground. So you're not always setting yourself up for success if you ground the shells of XLRs. So that's sort of an old studio trick, sort of not really done too many places anymore.
I think I've got a few just for vocals that I've got, but there's two of them.
Yep. But shielding is a great idea, especially in balanced cables, because you have the opportunity to lift the ground at one end or the other. And I forget off the top of my head right now which end it's better to lift at. Usually at the stage end.
At the source.
Well, yeah, at the source, is the spot to lift it. Because those shields, because they are sort of antennas for noise, they can either catch that noise and funnel it into an audio circuit, or ideally would take that noise and funnel it to ground, whether it's noise from static electricity, nearby broadcast sites, police radios, aircraft,
fluorescent lights,
dimmers, you name it. That noise will get onto the shield, and the idea is for it to just go back to the earth through the ground wire. But if it doesn't, if it gets into your audio path, a way to alleviate, usually, well, I won't say all. It doesn't completely kill it, but it'll drop. Lifting the ground,
negligible.
Yeah, lifting the ground drops the noise enough in general that it doesn't become an issue anymore. And I want to touch real quickly on the subject of balanced cables between instruments and amps. We had actually looked at doing this for a guitar player where I work. He wanted to get his amp further away from him, way upstage, so we could isolate it. And he just got himself a 50-foot guitar cable, which, fortunately, our room is pretty doggone quiet. There's,
but other places that's a 50-foot long antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you'll hear ham radio operators from Bolivia on that normally.
Yeah.
because we have dedicated electrical supplies for our stage, for the entire sound system. And actually, the Midas that I mix on is so well isolated that I can actually set an iPhone 3 on it.
An AT&T iPhone 3.
Yeah, that's the key, which in the States, I don't know if it's the same in Europe, but AT&T
it's
phones...
with GSM.
GSM phones in the States are incredibly noisy. In fact, you heard some of that noise on the last podcast. The mic cable got too close to my phone. That's what that breakup was at the beginning of the transmission last time. But, yeah, I can set an iPhone on the desk and hear nary a pop or whisper of data transfer. So let's see. I'm kind of leaving it to the sidelines here while I cover the physics of things. A couple other things I want
to
debunk real quick are the subject of speaker cables. Shielding's a good idea if there's some foil in there, but it's not really necessary. Because noise will get into speaker cables, but part of what helps those is that they're twisted. So if noise gets onto one wire, a spike of noise going in one direction, polarity-wise, it's actually going into the other wire reversed polarity, or pretty near. So just having a pair of cables twisted together inside the jacket will do a fair amount of noise rejection. If there's a shield on there as well, that'll help. But with a level of audio traveling down a speaker line, it's usually a good deal higher than any kind of noise that would generally be in there. So it's not as critical with speaker wires. And a couple other of these things, like the wicked expensive cables, it's just bunk, folks.
The ones that say audio path and have arrows on them.
Yeah, that show you the direction.
Favorite.
Now, there is a tiny, tiny bit of truth. In the most elite sort of situations, like a high-class guitar rig in a mastering studio, it might be worth shelling out for, like, the hand-built Mogami numbers, the impedance matched specifically for the task at hand, cables, but that's more of an impedance thing, really, than just not
an audio flow path.
Yeah,
or signal path,
or a gold connectors path, or right. Whatever. And especially for speaker, I laugh at my home stereo nut friends. I have a couple of them that think a 200 watt home stereo is a big system, like 200 watts per channel.
To spend $50 on a 10-foot RCA cords with gold ends and
right. I had a cousin that went to the electrical supply store and bought 6-gauge wire to hook up his speakers
and start his car.
So he was convinced it would sound better. And you can buy oxygen-free cables for your vocal mics, and it's there's a million articles. As much propaganda as there is from the manufacturers pushing this stuff, there are nearly as many articles by experts who have, in a lot of cases, empirically tested this, and not only found no difference audibly to the human ear, but also found no difference on fairly sophisticated lab equipment. So, cable's a cable. It's only as good as the jacket, the insulation, the construction of the connectors, and the string relief. So, there is something to be said for not buying dirt cheap cable. But
Alan Parsons was one of the guys. I was trying to think of his name, but yeah, he wrote articles about how all of his audiophile friends have all these great home studio or home theater systems. They put all kinds of money into it. And he's like, you know what? I'm a sound guy. I'm an engineer. I can buy something that's a tenth of the price of yours and make it sound better than you just hooking up fancy equipment to itself.
Yep. The latest thing that just got me, and I don't know how I hadn't heard of this. I knew like Monster would sell like a power strip with some noise reduction in it, which there is some credence to that. Guys in the audio realm, you'll be familiar with the Furmans and other things you can put in a rack that'll. Those actually have an RF, a radio frequency filter in them to get any noise that's gotten into the power system out of your signal. And they have varying degrees of effectiveness. I had one Furman catch on fire at a gig. It was the RF filter that smoked, and
I think we took it out, and by the end of the show, like we didn't notice a difference.
And I bypassed it. I ripped it out of the unit, bypassed it, and put the unit back in service. And the real key is, sometimes you do get in a building where you have noisy power, but using balanced cables and understanding how electricity is run in a building is a big thing. Again, there's plenty of articles on that. I grew up in a construction family. I was a residential and commercial electrician for 20 years of my life. I know how to hunt down the right circuit in a room to plug some stuff in, and I know a couple of tricks to figure out what plug is what. But, hunting down clean power, which is not to say that I haven't been in some gigs where there's noise from an industrial complex down the road or something on there where there's just some obnoxious noise literally on the power coming in that it's pretty hard to work around. But in general, if you're getting buzz, it's because something's plugged in the wrong spot. You have, your mixer plugged in on one leg and the amps and everything else plugged in on the other leg. So there's a couple, in live sound anyway, techniques. Like wherever I plug my amp rack in, that's also where I plug my mixer in. That's also where I plug the musicians in. And, the bigger things get, the easier it gets. If you have a 3-phase generator taking care of your stage, you can dedicate a leg or two or even a separate generator to lighting and have a whole generator all for sound, or have one leg for sound and 2 legs for lighting. There's a lot of different ways you can do to keep the power clean. So anyway, there is a little bit of credence to that about filtering out the power coming in because the power system was designed to be safe and efficient, not necessarily to be quiet audio-wise. But you can buy, I started saying all that to say this, is you can buy audiophile electrical outlets, and people will swear to you up and down that taking the little outlet out of your wall and putting in this $100 audiophile outlet will somehow, through the wonders of its, highly metallurgical, specialized, plated contacts, will provide, will make your symphonic recordings sound better on your turntable at home, which don't believe it, folks.
Once you got money to throw away, and then might as well give it a shot.
And hire us to come tune your system. It's $100 much better spent. I like to stay out of home audio, but I'll come out for a couple of bucks and set you straight. Let's see what else. Oh, let's talk about, we got started on our buddy Darren. We're actually going to get Darren on the show here. When we do a guitar show, he just had a breakthrough this week. We haven't retubed his amp yet. I'm talking direct to Ant. Y'all can just put it on pause for a minute. But he had a Fender Hot Rod that the tubes had gone. So we ordered new tubes. He switched to another amp and also put an MXR, the orange distortion pedal in the chain.
The yellow, golden.
Oh, the orange.
The phaser?
Nope, distortion.
MXR. Oh, this the 78 distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jimmy frickin' Page, my friend. It was unreal how good his guitar sounded.
He just had a stack of pedals sitting in the office when I dropped the amp off. I was like, I wonder if you would miss a tremolo for a week or two, because I kind of need one.
He'd probably let you borrow one.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. But at any rate, this is the guitar player we were talking about that wanted to remote his amp, so he just got a 50-foot guitar cable, and we have a very quiet building. So he was able to get away with it. There's a little bit of noise on it. I gated out. When the stage is quiet, you can hear a little buzz if I don't pull the faders back, so I threw some expanders on his guitar mics. But the way to do it, and we've discussed this, is to switch to balanced connection as close to the instrument and as close to the amp as you can. Now, you can, if you want to try this out, if you're having trouble, this is how the big boys do it on, you go out and see Metallica, and Kirk Hammett's 80 feet away from his guitar tech and the stack of effects that he's using, and then that's 80 feet away from his amps on stage. That's 160 feet of antenna. So they'll, he's going wireless probably back to the racks, but for long runs like that, you can do this yourself. Go down to Radio Shack for $17 a pop. You can get an impedance matcher, which has a 1/4-inch jack on one side, XLR on the other. You'll need one of each gender to go on an XLR cable, or if you're crafty, you can just buy
a couple direct boxes and flip one.
Well, you can buy direct boxes and flip one. You'll need a couple gender bender adapters, or I was going to say you can go on a website and order a couple impedance matching transformers and do that stuff. Build your own.
Or you buy the really nice, expensive, shiny yellow radial ones, the SGI.
Well, and that's where we're going. So the basic setup is you go from the guitar into one of these impedance matching devices, which is, it gets you from 1/4-inch to XLR, but properly matches the impedance across them. And incidentally, once it winds up in the mic cable, it's a balanced signal and therefore relatively immune to noise. And then once you get to the guitar, you switch it back to 1/4-inch, thereby switching the impedance back again. The only thing is, that'll work, that'll function, but it will change your tone because guitar systems are largely dependent on impedance. The amp is looking to be, I forget which way, what loads what, but
the pedals guitar to, that's why they call them buffers. Like, you'll hear a lot of guitar players talk about having, they want a totally true bypass signal chain, but the problem with that is if you run through 10 pedals, you got all those little quarter inches in between, so every single time you're dropping your impedance. So a lot of, knock 'em or not, boss pedals all have actually a pretty good little impedance buffer. So your tone, like, once you run it through 10 pedals, you're going to notice that there's a lot of high end gone out of your guitar. That's why I'll run, or you can buy little impedance buffers and stuff to make up for that.
So you may, depending on how the impedance matchup works, but basically an amp loads up a pickup on a guitar. The amp is looking to see a sort of specific range of impedances from guitar pickups, which is why pickups are such a hot topic among guitar players, because changing your pickups, not only because of the electromagnetic way that it picks up the sound from the strings, also because of the internal impedance of them. It'll load an amp differently, load up the input on it.
And that's why there are effects loops on amps, so you're actually meant to plug right into the amp at first.
Yep.
And then the amp will correct it for you if you got a good in and out
and
circuit.
There's a couple instances where you might want to put an effect before, but an effects loop is a great place on an amp to do all your patching, because you wind up with a cleaner, more pure signal chain. But what Anthony was mentioning there was Radial makes an impedance matching device that allows you to switch to balanced cable, and is specifically designed so that the guitar's pickup is seeing the same load that an amplifier would present, and the amplifier is seeing an impedance in accordance with what a guitar would be putting out. So you basically fooled both ends of the signal chain into thinking that they're plugged directly into each other, while enjoying the benefits of balanced cable, a balanced connection in between them.
And I think you can run up to like 200. I think those are 250 feet you can run of mic line without it. Like, you'll get a little bit of delay, but then they sell a dragster to correct for the delay that you're getting.
Yeah, but audio travels at the speed of light. How much delay could there be?
How much delay could there be? No, I think the dragster is actually more for wireless stuff.
Okay, there can because of the processing in newer wireless stuff, there can be a delay. But yeah, you're talking about like femtoseconds at that point.
It's something to talk about.
So you smell that? Might be some more bullshit marketing. But anyway,
if I was endorsed, I would totally do that all day long.
But that's definitely something to consider. On short runs, it's not such a concern. On short runs, just having some well-built cables with good shielding in them, that can be a big help toward quieting down your rig. So there's some things about cabling. Lifting grounds, avoiding AC hum. Pretty much talked myself hoarse here the first part. Let me check the time here. Oh gosh, we're only about a third of the way through. We're in good shape.
Cool.
Let's see. I had some other ideas of stuff to cover. I was gonna. This is funny. I was gonna write a blog post about this, but I think I'm gonna skip it because it'll go quicker in the telling if I do it here. Show up to rehearsal tonight. I'm running down my inputs, and somebody else had set up the stage. And we're running through the sound check. We're like, all right, drums, yep, good. Bass, yep, good. Okay, acoustic guitar. He starts playing, and his signal is coming out of the bass amp, just as pure and clean as the driven snow. And I walk down on stage, and I'm just standing there, like, utterly perplexed. Now, the bass player has an old Shure VHF wireless unit, and I'm like...
with a green logo.
Like, how is this even happening? Like, the acoustic guitarist is direct into the system. And Darren was like, "Is this even possible?" And I'm starting to consider like what sort of demons have inhabited the sound system.
They're called sanctuary gnomes, and I've got a lot.
Yeah, I've got a few. You call them gnomes? What do I call them? I forget. I haven't heard any gremlins.
Interns.
I call interns. They're the ones I call the gnomes. No, I have a few gremlins. So I'm like, this is the weirdest gremlin I've ever run across. Well, what it was is in my system, I've got on either side of my stage a snakehead, which is actually a multi-pin connector, and I can plug sub-snakes into those, and they feed up the front of house. Well, every input is represented on either side of the stage. So my drums are on 1 through 12. If I plug a sub-snake into the A connector on the other side of the stage, I can have 12 more inputs showing up on 1 through 12, which is a no-no, so we cap those off. What we also have is all 48 inputs showing up again in floor pockets spread throughout the stage. And there's, a few here, a few there. They sort of spread them out willy-nilly. And those are all connected, too. Whether or not through a transformer, I have yet to find out. That's one item. They might just be direct Y splits. So anyway, what had happened was the guy that set up the stage accidentally plugged the acoustic guitar into a channel that was already occupied by the bass, and his signal was pushing back through the direct box, which was just a passive DI, and right up into the bass amp. And it sounded pretty good. So we repatched that quick, and that was just an amusing moment. So I won't. Again, I could explain it better if I could draw diagrams, but I won't attempt to accompany.
We should get one of those. Well, we'll get a Wacom pad. We'll animate the podcast on YouTube.
That'd be a great contribution for your wife. She could just draw stick figures.
I would draw stick figures.
So that was just an interesting little thing that happened to me this week. I don't know, what else are we going to talk about, Anth?
We could talk about the guitar amp we're going to build with a Hammond.
Yes. All right. This is. Let me break for a moment and talk about how we structure things here. When we have a larger panel here, I like to try and emulate some other podcasts that I listen to that have things kind of segmented, where they'll at least have like 2, 3, 4 topics they want to talk about, and the host sort of moves things along. Moderate, move things along, keep it on topic, or not, as you know, if things become interesting. Being that it's just me and my bud here, we tend to freeform it a little bit, and I feel like that's useful because I don't know, I couldn't even tell you what percentage, a fairly high percentage of what I know about audio I learned from listening to other sound guys just have conversations. Yep. And sometimes I understood it and was able to contribute, and sometimes it was
like reading the Yamaha sound reinforcement manual
when you're 13. Sometimes it went way over my head, but I could remember some of it and go look it up later and get into it, or maybe I would not understand it right then but remember it, and later on down the road experience something that would call up that memory. So we do pursue the conversational method of instruction here. So, at my work, at my job, we have in our possession a Hammond
H111.
H111, yep, thank you. Organ, console organ, which I'm slowly learning the history of. It's actually never been played, never been fired in anger. In its tenure at our church, it was donated by a little old lady 10 or 12 years ago. Nobody had the heart to tell her no, so it went into storage, and it is sat in climate-controlled storage for more than a decade. So very low mileage piece, but it had, I don't know, there were enough things wrong with it that it really wasn't functional. Well, we weren't ever going to use it for anything. So we finally decided, like, all right, get the thing out of here. Find somebody that wants it. Anthony had thought about taking it, fixing it up, using it for stuff, but it's really not a desirable piece. It's really for home use.
It's not, like it was, like, to go, I guess, a little bit more history, like Hammond, if you're going to buy a Hammond, you want an A, a B, or a C. Like the A was the predecessor. In different models, like the A100 and the 101 were nice. The A105 had speakers in the floor, and most people took them out. But those were the original, the ones with the percussion sounds and the really nice drawbars and the pedals and the original 6-pin Leslies and all that stuff. And those are the ones that people want. And after a while, Hammond wanted to get out of the church and theater business and more into the home business. So they made a less expensive organ, which really kind of shows up in the sound. It just doesn't. It's not as dirty as an old B3. So the pastor of my church actually has a C3 organ, which is a B3 with a cabinet on the bottom. So it's more presentable for church. Like a B3 looks like kind of like a table. Like it's exposed. It just has table legs on it pretty much and a top. So this is essentially a B3. So that's why I turned down the one that John has, and it's a beast to move. Like, that sucker's not worth as heavy as it is.
It weighs nigh on 500 pounds.
Getting that up 2 flights of stairs to my office. Just
right. And it's not, the folks at Hammond was acquired by somebody else years ago. They don't support anything. And while there is a large...
there's a big community.
There's a big community, but it's really based around the A, B, and C models. There is somewhat of a community around the H's and the M's, but not to the extent... And from what I've read on the internet, is the majority of that community is interested in making their H or M sound as much like a B or C as possible. It's really not desirable at all to put an H or an M back into full working order.
You're pretty much taking everything out and just using the shell because it's there.
And it's kind of a neat community because some of the guys in there are old timers who, worked at music shops that did repairs on them when they were new and when organs were popular to have at home and when they were really singing in churches quite a bit. and a lot of those guys still own music stores or, still work at them and remember all this stuff and will work on things. There's also a large portion of the community that's younger guys who have taken an interest in those sounds and preserving them and modifying them and putting them into use. So there is a vibrant organ restoration community out there, just not anywhere in my neighborhood where anybody wanted to come over and get our stuff. So Anthony and I have been talking for years and just haven't had the time to do it.
Or the money.
Or the money.
For parts.
No time, no money. But have wanted to just sort of take a stab at building a tube guitar amp. Not that we necessarily feel like we could beat anybody else's amp. It would just be fun to have one that we built to play through.
Huh.
So the first idea was, all right, we got this organ. It has a really nice tube amp in it, which that part of it was still functional. Most of the problems with the organ were with the key bed and the tone generator and a couple other things. But this particular model had a 15-inch cone and 2 8s. So basically have a 3-channel amplifier there. You could make a pretty unique cabinet out of it for guitar or bass,
right.
Utilizing the switching those different amp channels in and out. And the reason I told you about the usage of it before is the tubes are all incredibly low mileage, and some of them are pretty hard to get.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them, which the ones in this one were all the original Hammond labeled tubes, although I'm not sure they made their own.
I don't think they did. I think at the beginning they might have, but I feel like they might just be GE.
They're probably GEs or RCAs or some other
some tech type thing.
Ancient manufacturer. But to get new old stock, which is to say, vintage tubes that are still new in box, never been used. One of the pairs I was finding on eBay for $1,800, new old stock. Another pair was $1,200, and a couple other ones were sort of garden variety.
Should find some boxes and sell those suckers.
They're sitting in my car. But then we had the idea, all right, well, what if we pull these amps out and build a guitar amp out of them? So we thought, all right, I'll yank them. And I pulled it open, I looked at it, and there's actually a little more to it than that. Like, not the drawbars are all connected to, like, the tone wheels and such, but there are some other, I don't know what they're called, like the popsicle stick switches on there.
Just the different sounds.
Yeah, they actually run some functions on the amps. So it was going to be tricky to just yank them and put them in a box and plug a guitar into them. Then I got the idea, and I kind of still want to do this, even if it's just for 20 minutes one day. Disconnect the tone generators and get it so we can match a guitar into this thing, fire it up, and see
the drawbars.
See just how much the drawbars will do to it. Like,
I still think I think we can do that, but if they're not too useful, I think we should rewire them to tone pots and just use those as the actual potentiometers. And they're like, oh, you need more bass here. Let me pull the 16, the 12.
Right.
What?
Well, so that was the other idea. As the idea evolved, Anthony's pretty interested in building a copy of a Dumble amplifier, which the thing about a Dumble is the components were very carefully chosen, very high end. I mean, even down to the little resistors and the wire. It was the
crazy secretive about his stuff.
Yep.
Like, he'd build an amp and then coat the whole entire thing in opaque epoxy so no one could figure out what it was. And like, heard stories of guys who were like, "Yep, dropped it straight out of the back of a truck, picked it up and it worked." Like, I just want something that clean and that useful, bulletproof, really, because I'm cheap and I don't like getting my amps fixed.
Right. So, I guess what it came to is, what do you have? Another old hot rod, or?
Yeah, I've got it's a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, but it was one of the limited edition ones. So instead of the black and the gray amp, it's a really nice, some kind of pine cabinet that's dovetailed, and you can see the wood, and it's a sunburst amp with an oxblood grill cloth. It looks really neat.
So yeah, it's an amp with a paint job like a Fender guitar.
Yeah, pretty much, and it looks cool. And when it's working great, it sounds really good. But my big beef with it is that it's a hybrid amp. It's not a hand-wired tube amp. It's not a solid-state amp. There's tubes in it, and they do stuff. Like, they definitely warm up the sound and make it nicer than a solid-state amp. But at the same time, if something goes wrong on that circuit board, I'm screwed. I'm out like $150 to take it somewhere and get it fixed for, one thing that I can't even find with what I've got. So, like, I can retube the thing. I've done it for years, but filter caps are being weird and other weird resistors are going, and I honestly don't have the time or care too much. I've got another amp that I'm using now.
So anyway, the idea became to take that old hot rod, the chassis, the box basically, And Anthony procured some schematics for a Dumble amp, and we're going to attempt to use the transformers, because those are really a large part of the expense of building a tube amplifier. Right. Is you need a power transformer that gives you several different voltages. You need one voltage to run the filaments in the tubes, the heaters. You need another voltage for the screens, and you need another voltage for... Well, it winds up on the plate, but basically the cathode voltage.
It's a 3-part system.
So, and they're no joke either. I mean, we're talking about 400, 500, 600 volts DC.
Something you really want to stick a fork into.
Right. And, the power supply is also, it's sort of the unsung hero of a guitar amp. Like, a really good power supply can make or break an amp. So the rectifier in there, the part that converts that voltage into DC, is pretty critical. So we're going to be looking at that as we move forward with the project.
Right.
But then the idea is to basically take the tube sockets and the transformers and strip it of everything else and build a new chassis inside to get as close as we can to the Dumble spec without actually spending $6,000 on parts.
Right, yeah.
So then the other idea was, we still have this Hammond laying around, and I think the idea is we'll get the amp block out of there, and we'll figure out what controls on it do and need to be done, and maybe wire those to some other kind of switches. But the idea is to sort of build that block, the power supply block and the amplifier block, into some sort of case or cabinet, possibly somewhat vintage looking.
Right.
And take a set of drawbars out and make one the gain and one the master volume, and one the lows, one the mids, one the highs, one the reverb. That organ actually has a pretty nice reverb tank in it.
Yeah.
Classic spring reverb sound. And that's all plumbed in already. So looking at taking that 15 and those 2 8s, some of the drawbars, and all of the amp circuitry, and get that made into some sort of functioning guitar and or bass amp.
Right.
Just to see if we can do it. It may well be god awful.
Because we're not busy or anything. Like,
yeah,
we've got a lot of spare time to kill. So in the next 3 years, we'll probably
be exactly where we are right now, still talking about it. But it's a fun mental exercise anyway. Actually, I used to have a friend who he'd always be making grandiose plans. I used just to cuss him out for it. I was like, dude, you always say you're going to do this stuff. He's like, dude, planning it's most of the fun. I'm like, you're right. So we do that a bit. It's good mental exercise to sort of plan these things out, even if we never get as far as drawing out the actual circuits and designing stuff. It's a fun mental exercise. And then with whatever parts of it are left, there's a volume pedal in there. We
just make a guitar volume pedal.
That'd be hilarious to have. Like, dude, that's a vintage Hammond volume pedal right there. You listen to the tone. It's off right now, and just hear the tone. Do you hear it? Organy goodness.
Takes up half my pedal board.
It's a monster. But we thought it'd be cool with the rest of the drawbars to either mod them into existing amplifiers, or basically do that same sort of control scheme, like connect them to pots and
turn into an EQ pedal.
Sure, there you go. Yeah, even if it's just something as simple as that. Yeah, an EQ pedal with vintage Hammond drawbars for controls.
Maybe
we can sell it to Michael.
Oh.
Maybe that'll be his gift for a year of solid service to the podcast.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the fun little mental exercise that we've been on, and it's good just to think about this stuff. I started learning about tube circuitry. I mean, there's so much voodoo and just superstition about tubes.
You got to have a matched pair, like all this kind of stuff. Like there's this awesome, goofy little man right around the corner from me that when my nice amp is broken, I'll take it to him because he's just a wealth of stories. His name's Frank, the Fender Man.
Fender Frank.
And you can mention his name to any, like he works. I think the Goo Goo Dolls still send their matchless and their high watts and their old vintage Twins and Marshalls to Frank to get fixed, and they live in LA now. Frank is the goofiest little man I've ever met in my entire life. He lives with his mom. Like Frank's at least like 50, and he lives with his mom in this little house. And he works out of the basement, and it's like going down there is like going back in time. Like it's like walking into a living room from the 70s. Everything's wood paneled with that green shag carpet and all this stuff. And he's just got like manuals upon manuals upon manuals of stuff, like amps I've never even heard of. And he's got these neat little cool projects where he'll chop apart Fender amps and make new Fender amps. And I thought about for a while of actually having him take my Deluxe and turning it into a 64 Fender reverb, or Fender Deluxe reverb. But he's, you talk to a bunch of people around here, he's the only guy that they'll go to because they don't trust anybody else, because he's creepy and weird enough and has the craziest stories about stuff to make you really feel like he's the one that should be working on your tube amps, even though it takes him a while and he's backed up forever and he doesn't answer his phone because I'm pretty sure it's like a prepaid wireless and he runs on minutes all the time and stuff. Like, he's a hard guy to get a hold of, but I've never had anything ever come back from him or heard about things coming back from him that aren't in fantastic shape and working condition. And I think the last time I took an amp out to him, my wife sat in the car for 3.5 hours while he told me stories about when he used to play in a country bebop band, which I still don't get, but he did that for a while. But he's, that's the kind of the creepy, weird voodoo of the tubes that I don't know, guys like me and guys that are way more involved than me really want to have working on their stuff, because it's kind of like a little community, I guess. Like, everybody's got the hybrid amps and all that stuff, but like when you show up with a really nice old, like a vintage, like 60s Vox or something like that, like people take notice and you kind of want to keep up that persona, I guess.
So, yeah, eventually guys like Fender Frank are going to die off, and hopefully Anthony and I will be in a place to move into our mom's basement and take over the
I don't want to move into my mom's basement.
The freaky old guitar tube guy. But, so yeah, when I was younger, when I was learning how to play guitar in my teens, I was like, oh, tube, you got to have tube this, tube that. And, really anybody and their cousin was just shoving a 12AX7 in a piece of junk amp and extolling the virtues of its tube warmth. Where I really started to learn about things was I had kind of an interest in radio always, and eventually found out it was really easy to get your ham radio license, in America anyway. So I did, and I started studying up on stuff and learning about the tube amps that hams use for radio applications, and all the principles are the same. Just it took getting into that literature to really find out what the specs mean, how they behave, how tube technology morphed into semiconductor technology, and how all that stuff interacts. And getting to the bottom of that stuff was just incredible. Like, it helped my mixing, understanding how gain stages work together and how gain structure works. So there's really a lot to be said. I mean, real world experience is great, and there are a lot of guys that have a ton of that. But I feel like the people that really get ahead are the people that sort of understand the innards of their gear. And I've said, time and again, there are a lot of guys out there that call themselves engineers that really have no business. There's an art and a science to it, and you need to be as on top of the science as you do the art. You need to be able to understand music and emotion and art, but you also need to understand transistors and transformers and gain stages and impedances and all that sort of thing. And, I feel like a real engineer knows his gear, like understands what's going on in those semiconductors and in those signal paths, and then uses that to take a step beyond. Knows it like a painter knows his paints, like a woodworker knows his chisels.
That whole you gotta know the rules before you can break them type thing.
Exactly. So, having said all that, where did I even leave off? Where did I get into? Anyway, I guess I was just talking about mental exercises. If you can find a way to learn about it, and I'm not saying you should necessarily go out and get your ham ticket, but finding some way to get into really understanding how audio circuits in general work, and tubes are a great venue, a great way of learning that stuff. Just learning the difference between Class A, Class AB, Class D, the different classes of amplifiers, how they behave, what they do to the sound, what it means for efficiency, why one class is great for amps that are going to drive subwoofers and one's great for $1 million
right.
studio consoles and $20,000 guitar amps. But I just totally stalled out, so I'm going to take this opportunity to check the time. And, okay, cool, we got a few minutes left. Where to now, Brother Anthony?
Let's see. We talk about how I'd kind of wrecked my whole ideals of drum making in the studio today.
Oh, yeah, let's hear about that. He sent me a picture, but it was tiny on my cell phone. So
But I think I mentioned a few podcasts ago or something about a band that I was listening to called Minus the Bear, and they just came out with a new album. I had last week off, so I did a lot of sitting around and playing video games and reading blogs. And
how come we didn't have lunch last week? What the heck?
I was on vacation. You didn't come over at all? No, you came over on Wednesday. On my birthday. You came
that's
over.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Probably because I wasn't awake at lunchtime last week. And as soon as, just like clockwork, yesterday I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, right back for work. But usually in the studio, my normal drum miking technique is on the kick, I'll do a Beta 52, and I'll stick it in, then I'll point it at the resonant side of the head, but up in the top corner. So if you're sitting at the kit, it would be the front right-hand corner of it. And then I'll stick a Beta 91 inside there. On the top of the snare mic, or on the top of the snare, I'll do an Audix i5 or 57. On the bottom, I like doing a SM81. On the toms, because I don't have an extra grand to spend on the Sennheiser MD421s, I've got Audix D2s and D4s. For a ride mic, I'll under mic it and use Beta 57, and on the hi-hat, another SM81. And for overheads, I'll use KSM 44s. After sitting around all last week, just with my jaw on the floor of these drum sounds that they got, went through and looked at some of the recording pictures, and I don't know why it never occurred to me to maybe just really dumb down my recording technique. Like, I don't have a great room to do stuff in, so the large diaphragm condensers are nice, but they're noisy and they don't have enough air in them. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do things a little bit different. So the tom mics stayed the same. They stayed the Audix. And what I did is I actually constructed this little hi-hat booth out of an old moving blanket, and I strung it up with 2 boom stands and an old hi-hat stand, and I think my pop filter, because I wasn't using that for anything else. So there's this nice little cage around the hi-hat so it doesn't get into anything else. And on the snare, instead of using a top and bottom mic, I put the i5 on top, and then I just straight up gaff taped an AKG C451 right next to it.
Little pencil mic.
Yeah, like I haven't used them for anything because they're really not. I don't know. They're not the C451Bs. They're the C451 EBs. So they're a little bit weird. They had interchangeable heads and no gain adjustment, just a high pass filter on them. I was like, you know, I'm really gonna do this like I think I wouldn't do it. So I did that. No bottom snare mic, no ride mic. Left an SM81 on the hi-hat. Put the other 451 that I had on the hi-hat in that little hi-hat booth, and then got rid of the 44s for overheads and replaced them with the SM81s. And after tracking down one bad cable in there, sat down and got, I think, the best snare sound I've ever gotten in my entire life out of an old Ludwig Superphonic from the 70s, 6.5-inch aluminum snare drum. It sounds like $1 million. Like, if you get that sweet spot in the center, there's no reverb on it. It's got the perfect amount of ring. It sounds like a sample. And we did a couple things. We did some jazz stuff with some brushes, and I don't know if I'm going to go back. Like, unless I get a better room, I don't think I'm going to go back to a different technique. Like, I've got the perfect amount of ride in my stuff. I've got the perfect amount of hi-hat, and the hi-hat doesn't bleed through in the top, and the snare is actually a little bit isolated from the hi-hat mic, so all that stuff's kind of nice and blocked out. And I switched from two kick mics that I really, really like, and I stuffed a D112 in there, and I feel like I'm swearing. I was like, you know, I've heard John, like, I've had one, I didn't like it, so I stole John's Beta 52, like, 8 or 9 months ago. I've been using that ever since. And
best money he ever spent.
Joe Meek, actually.
Yeah. Ooh.
I have at least a couple weeks worth of John's pay in my booth. But like, you know, John said that studio guys love the D112, so I'll give it a shot, and stuck it in there about 5 inches off center, and then pointed it a little bit off the head. And got this, not a real beatery sound, just a real nice jazz thud. Like, it's a 22-inch kick, so it's got enough low end to it. But the one thing I was combating a lot, it made me think about not using the 91 at first, was someone last week at church shoved the kick drum forward, and the stand that the kick mic was on, the Beta 52, ripped 3/4 of the way through the front head.
That put a little click into it then?
A little bit all over the place. And I didn't know because I was on vacation, so I didn't go to the Sunday morning service because I had the morning off. And Sunday night I went and I heard the drummer sit down and kick it, and it sounded unbelievably bad. And then I looked over and realized that, first of all, the microphone was pointing at the sidewall of the kick drum because it was shoved so far in there. So real quick, jumped in there, threw some gaff tape on the head, which kind of worked. And honestly, right now, there's probably about 1/4 of a roll of gaff tape just holding that thing together.
Just take it off.
I was thinking about it, but I like the little bit of ring that it's got to it for the jazz stuff, at least.
I mean, so you get a new head.
Right, yeah. I'm cheap. I'm real cheap. Like, I just ordered new drum heads last week. I just got them. I just put them on. And actually, Sunday night, for the service I was there, after I realized the front kick head was shot, in the middle of the service, the drummer busted through the batter head. So in the middle of service, I had to stop, put my guitar down, because he was waving his arms around me like, I can't. Like, he's trying to recreate it on the floor tom, but the floor tom wasn't having any of that. So I had to run upstairs, change drum heads in the middle of a set, and like magic, on where the song really, really needed to get big, he just crashed back in, and the sound guy didn't know what was going on, so he had everything cranked, because he thought he was just playing quiet, so it sounded like an earthquake in that sucker.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I just thought of, while you were talking, some stuff that's coming up. We're starting production on our movie this year. Every year for Christmas, my church makes a movie instead of doing a pageant or a play. It winds up coming together with some live action and a live band on stage. The band underscores the sections of the movie that we shot, and then we record all of that, get it all on a DVD. If you click on the blog, click on the topics link in the bar at the top, look for Project Movie. There's 5 or 6 articles in there already about last year's. You can see last year's DVD. We're through a lot of the process now. Shoots are starting. We've got 4 days of shooting coming up in a couple of weeks here. So pretty much written everything I can about the prep. And then once we get through that, through 4 days of shooting and 3 days of scrambling to get my day job stuff done, I probably will have enough brain cells left to write a couple of posts about that and just let you know how it went and how some of the ideas we came up with for doing it this year have panned out. So those of you who are interested in movie sound, by all means, check on that. Keep an eye peeled for that. The other thing, and this is kind of exciting, just recently I've had a couple opportunities to do some pre-production critical listening to some projects that my friends have worked on. One was the girl Lucy, a friend of mine from college, who put out a cool, weird little album. It's actually coming out, is it not coming out till October? But I got to listen to that, make some suggestions, which I was incredibly gratified to find out that she took, and nice. Did some fixes. Anyway, and I almost got to master it, too. I missed out on that because she had already asked another friend to master it, but I'm hoping to work with her again on a future project. Lucy, if you're listening. Well, anyway, that record's done and pressed. It's actually going to be available largely for digital distribution, so as soon as it's on iTunes and there are links for it, I've got a press pack that I'll be going through, and I'm going to review it basically on the blog, although not as a normal music reviewer would. I'll be reviewing it with an eye or an ear, as it were, toward the production. So we'll be talking a little bit about, the songwriting and the emotion of the thing, because that's important to us in our trade to capture those elements of something as we're working on it. But just to go through the production, it's not a record like anything else you're going to hear out there, I don't think. So it's kind of a unique listening opportunity. It'll also help my friend out to get a bunch of hits. And if some of you guys decide to pony up the dough and buy a couple of tracks, that would be huge for her as an artist. The other one is some local friends right here in town. Our good buddy Josh, who, let me see, he was playing bass in a band that I did just a ton of work for, and nearly every gig was in a high school auditorium in one place or another.
Josh.
Yep.
So
cool guy, and he's playing bass in one band, playing drums in another one, and just out of the blue, hit me up on Facebook a couple of weeks ago and said, "Hey, my band just finished up an album. You want to take a listen to it and tell us what you think, and hush hush, don't let anybody else hear it. So, the songs aren't a mystery. I mean, people from the neighborhood know them, recognize them.
They play once or twice a week around town, so people have heard stuff.
But the album came out great. It's called the
Andrew J. Reamer's Country Punk Extravaganza.
Right. So I don't want to give too much away, but it's like imagine if Social Distortion made a record with Johnny Cash as the producer. Something like that.
Something like that.
It's pretty good. It's also pretty interesting from a production standpoint and a musical, not just a musical standpoint, but also in a production standpoint of. How they made something that was really raucous and loud, but also really full of feeling and emotion, and it has dynamics in it. Cool thing to listen to. And, yip, I get to mix the CD release party. I just found out today. So it's been a long time since I've gotten to mix Josh in a band, and I'm not sure I've ever mixed him on drums. I mean, if I have, it's been...
I didn't know he played drums, actually, until I saw a picture of him at one of the Harbor Festival shows. I think he opened for somebody.
But so anyway, just those couple of projects, that I found out just because friends, knew I work in this business and have a decent ear and got to listen to them and participate a little bit. Although Josh's record was sort of done by the time I got to it, he just sort of wanted the opinion of it. So I'm not easily impressed by stuff in general, like even in genres that I really like. Although I kind of like everything, but if it's not speed metal, I'm not as into it as other stuff. But so for a friend to locally make a country punk record, an alt country album, if you will, and have it really catch my interest, I thought that was worth sharing. So that'll be out. The CD releases in 2 weeks, so I'll have a report on mixing it live, and hopefully I'll have some tracks, some samples to put up on the website, and hopefully you run over there and buy that stuff too, because the music industry is a mess and people need all the support they could get. But both of these artists are sort of, they're at the forefront of the new music model of they're not going to press a lot of copies, if any, of their stuff. They're going to sell have the majority of their sales online as digital copies, and as much as that opens them up to piracy, that's the way the new model goes. So I'm going to do my bit and encourage people not to steal, to maybe sample and take a listen. But if you
really like it, like if you're behind what they're doing, you want them to keep doing what they're doing, then you got to help out a little bit.
Yep. And it's so affordable, really. I mean,
yeah, like I've done stuff like there are certain like I'm really against buying single songs because I feel if you're going to buy a single song, why not buy the whole album? Because chances are once you listen to something else, you're going to like it, and you spend more money in the long run buying single songs. But up front, it like honestly, it's a really nice ego stroke to know someone bought your whole album.
Yep.
Like, especially for...
And
for
I'm of the
like
exact opposite thinking is, I used to hate having to buy a CD to get one or two tracks that I really wanted to hear. So I buy almost exclusively singles, but what that allows me to do is instead of, there's really only ever been so much money in my budget for entertainment. Instead of buying, an album here and an album there, I buy a lot more music now than I did when I was a college student, had a lot more money at my disposal. Because I can pick up a song here and a song there, and it's $1 or I don't know, $1.29 or whatever it is on iTunes now.
Expensive singles are.
Yep. But that goes a long way towards supporting an artist, and I don't know. We could get into a whole thing about streaming music and how little that actually pays the artist, but
it's better than nothing.
Things are slowly sort of becoming viable for new artists. I mean, guys like Andrew, what is it, CK?
Oh yeah.
The comedian, bands like Radiohead.
Louis C.K.
Louis C.K. Who am I thinking of? Andrew W.K., not him.
Andrew W.K., sorry.
But Louis C.K., the comedian, and the band Radiohead really taking complete control and complete ownership of their art.
Nine Inch Nails did that, too.
Nine Inch Nails.
Front Runner's always been great about that stuff.
Going out, completely, basically blowing off the big music machine industry, marketing their own stuff, and making a whole lot more. And fortunately, that stuff is really starting to translate well. It's really affordable to get your stuff on iTunes now. And so instead of, hoping and praying that one day you'll sign to a label or maybe you can sell enough CDs at the merch table, I've known local bands that have gotten their stuff up online and have developed huge followings in other parts of the world, like
Kindo.
Reign of Kindo.
They're actually, I just bought a guitar from one of their guitar players, and he just asked me if he could borrow one of my guitar cases because they're going to Brazil again for another few weeks.
Yeah, they actually tour the world. Band I was thinking of was Liquid Violence, local thrash metal band that had a huge following in Europe, haven't even existed for quite a little while, and are still big in Europe. And they never made enough money where they could get themselves over there, but they could have really had a time of it playing the festivals over there. So anyway, I think it's really cool that the model is shifting so that artists can take control of their own stuff. They don't need to hope and pray that they can get signed to a deal, which is ultimately going to suck the life out of them. And, to work their day jobs, make music in their spare time because it's what they love to do, and also make a little money for it, from it. So yeah, that's our last word, our little PSA is support musicians, pay for their art.
Yeah, we need to eat too.
There was a great thing, you may have seen it, it was circulating on Facebook that...
the plumber thing?
The plumber thing. A guy called up and wanted a band for, his daughter's wedding, and he was shocked and disgusted that it was going to cost him $2,000, and the musician politely turned around and said, well, call the local plumbers union and ask them what it'll cost to get 6 guys to come down from 6 to midnight on a Saturday night, and we'll work for half of that.
And it's true.
So, anyway, I think we're over time by now. I haven't looked in a bit.
Probably.
Yeah, we're creeping. We're actually right at just about at the hour mark, so that's a good place to wrap it up.
But I'll throw in there, too, I'm going to have John master my wife's album and hopefully some other stuff. They can scrape up some cash, some gospel stuff that I'm working on. That's it's pretty tasty.
Yeah, I've been studying up on mastering. I've been listening to Dave Pensato's video blogs. Don't watch them. Just listen to the audio when I'm in the car. He's got just some monster mixing and mastering engineers on there. I mean, their resumes just read like the who's who of modern music.
Including the Who.
Yeah. And a lot of it's pop stuff, but just super, super interesting stuff. The really gratifying thing to hear is that all these guys, I never realized this. I always thought mastering was such a dark art, and it is, but all of these guys think... Like, it sounds backwards actually to say they think like me. I think like them, I guess is what I should say. In the way that I hear music and interpret it, I'm hearing the whole thing. I'm hearing a tonal balance and hearing the emotion and the motivation and figuring out what it is about it that's getting me excited.
I watched a Jack Joseph Puig video earlier today. Him in that picture that Blake posted of that nasty giant console and all that stuff. That was Jack Joseph Puig, but he was talking... he's like, when I get an album in to mix and master or mix down, he's like, what I really started doing, and I really realized that was the best place to start from was just to hit go. From the beginning, just hit go on a song, and within the first 30 to 45 minutes, don't get preconceived notions, just push up faders to where you think they're good at, and then work with that for just a little bit, just 30 to 45 minutes, and then stop and save it, and then keep working from there, and take snapshots of what you're doing, because a lot of times, if it's the first time you're hearing the music, it's the first time you're really feeling the music and not thinking about it, and you're doing what your heart's telling you to do with the mix instead of what your brain's telling you to do. Like there's a nice blend in between intellect and intuition, I think was the name of the video, where you can know all your stuff inside and out, and that's great, but at the same time, if you're just knowing your stuff inside and out, you're not giving the artist a chance to do what they're supposed to do. You're taking a lot away from the music. It's like, I can make anything sound like a pop CD, but maybe it's not supposed to sound like a pop CD. Maybe that's...
I think we just started the mastering show. Maybe we'll save that for next week. But yeah, it's cool to hear all these guys talk, and a lot of them feel sort of the same way I do about something. Like, well, what would you use on this? What would you use on that? Like, I don't know, I got to hear it, or I don't know, whatever I got. Right. There is a lot of preference and a lot of it for very expensive stuff, and then there's also guys just using the same cheapo plugins that everybody else, that the Paperboy has on his laptop making dubstep down the street. Which sort of just goes to show you that it ain't the meat, it's the motion. You can, to put it crudely, a good engineer and one that really understands music and emotion and the tech of his craft can take whatever gear out of the box and make magic happen with it. And then you can take some kid from Full Sail and put him behind an SSL with a room full of mastering comps and Class A, tube warmth.
And everything sounds like the Boss tones.
Yeah. So, I don't know, we're not going to start the mastering show right now because we're running dangerously close to starting a second hour. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll just hit pause for 2 seconds and start the next show right away. If we're feeling philosophical here in a couple of minutes, you may get us right back.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll wrap it up right there. Say thanks once again. We definitely appreciate all the readers and the listeners. We super appreciate when you make contact with us, even if it's just a quick line, couple of words in the comment box. That's like gold to us. We're going to do this regardless because we enjoy getting together and talking shop, and it annoys our wives, so we go in the backyard. But this is what we live and breathe. I literally dream about audio scenarios and solve problems in my sleep.
It's better than having nightmares.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is.
Well, sometimes they are nightmares.
I have more construction nightmares than audio nightmares. My audio nightmares are all waking ones. But so yeah, we're doing this because we love the craft. We love to talk about it and share ideas, and we love to talk about them and share them with you. So if you've got questions, by all means, get in contact. We are on Facebook. Search Smart to Noise Ratio. The page is easy to find. We're on Twitter at Smart2 Noise Blog. We're also on Google Plus. Similar search, you'll locate us. I think we've actually got enough stuff online now that if you Google us, we come up pretty close to the top.
Nice.
Yeah. So
that's
not
good to know.
Not bad for coming up with the name in 10 minutes when I started the blog 5 months ago. But so anyway, just want to say thank you and also encourage you to try things, to experiment, to seek out knowledge, because that's what separates us from the animals is art and technology and fusing the two together. And this industry definitely needs a lot of people who understand the tech and understand the emotion and put it all together. So hopefully that's you. Hopefully you're listening. Hopefully you're learning. Hopefully it's helping. And hopefully you have questions, because we are flat out of material, bro. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Who knows? We might be back in 20 seconds with the mastering episode, such as it is.
Yeah.
Being that neither of us have actually mastered anything, it'll
be a great show because we know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's it. It'll be a lot of hype, like handmade impedance match directional audio cables.
Everything coated in diamonds.
But no,
it sounds better that way.
I think it'll actually be a good show because all of the philosophy that mastering engineers have is all of the same philosophy that we have towards mixing live gigs, mixing in the studio, writing music, doing all that kind of stuff. So we'll call it the philosophy podcast instead of the mastering, because it's probably going to encompass a lot more than that. Although there will be some juicy tidbits that we have to share about stuff. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks again as I continue to gush, and we will see you next week. This has been the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. We'll see you.